West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
We're back with our expert panel to discuss SCOTUS possibly overturning Roe versus Wade. Neil, you took issue with something I said in the last block. What was it?
So you had said this is the first time the Supreme Court, if this draft opinion becomes law, taken away a right.
A right.
And unfortunately, the court has taken away rights before. Take, for example, the Voting Rights Act, which I defended successfully in 2009, only to have the Supreme Court in 2013 rip it away and say that Voting Rights Act was unconstitutional in the Shelby County case. And here's why this is so significant for this debate. The Alito draft says we should return the issue to the people, to the voters. This is a Republican Party that's bent on trying to take the vote away from people time and again. And you can't talk the language of democracy on Monday and then the other 6 days of the week try and rip it away from the American people or invade the Capitol in order to do so. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just not a plausible argument in today's society.
You know, Professor Greer and Reverend Sharpton, we got to talk about Justice Clarence Thomas and a comment that he made. We're going to put it up on the screen where he said, as a society, we are becoming addicted to wanting particular outcomes, not living with the outcomes we don't like, Thomas said. We can't be an institution that can be bullied into giving you just the outcomes you want. The events from earlier this week are a symptom of that. Professor Greer, I read that. All I could think was, child, please, are you serious? Are you serious?
Yeah. I read and reread that, Jonathan, several times, largely because Clarence Thomas is responsible for aiding and abetting the erosion of our institutions and our democracy, to say nothing of his wife. And so the fact that he would actually write that lets us know that he is so detached and so committed to his right-wing white nationalist philosophy of dismantling American democracy on a whole host of levels. And as you and Neil have pointed out, it started with voting rights a few years ago. It is right now we're in the moment with women and Roe v. Wade, but we know that it'll extend to not just gun control, but LGBTQ plus rights and contraception and so many other things. And we cannot count on Clarence Thomas to have a clear eye on any of these matters. We know that he is really committed to taking rights away, not just from African Americans, but the larger American public writ large.
Mm-hmm. And Rev, I'd love to get your insight on what Justice Thomas said there.
Well, first of all, I think he's making it clear that what Judge Alito said is exactly what he and others are willing to support. Secondly, if he's talking about people not liking and being addicted to outcomes, he ought to tell his wife that about the 2020 election, because exactly. She was part of the election protest, and she was part of January 6th that was trying to act like that election didn't happen. But thirdly, I think that what is very telling is he's not arguing about the constitutionality or the rightness of whatever decision they're coming with. He is talking about people's popular view or or go along with it or get used to it or get over it. He's not talking law, which is the politicization of the Supreme Court. And that is why people are losing a lot of faith in the court, because he is actually saying, I'm not arguing law, I'm arguing my view, and you get over it if you don't like my view. And I think that is dangerous, and that is something that we need to deal with.
And Professor Greer, you guys were succinct in your responses, so we have a little bit of time left. But Professor Greer, one of the things that leapt out at me in that leaked draft opinion from Justice Alito is a whole thing in there about the court shouldn't be concerned about reputational damage if they were to overturn Roe versus Wade. To my mind, what Justice Alito is doing there, speaking of bullying, is trying to bully the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. I'd love your view on that.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who has the honor and the privilege of speaking to the future minds of the American public, every week as a college professor, I see the fact that they have no faith or very little faith in the Supreme Court as an institution. And as I try and teach them about, the separation of powers, as we walk through Federalist 51 and think about checks and balances, they are absolutely disgusted to think about Supreme Court justices as hyper-partisan beings. And so in this particular moment, when we know that it is so important for us to pay attention to who our senators are, because a president is the person who nominates a justice, and the Senate are those individuals who confirm said justice. So I'm helping them understand the interconnectedness and how we can actually help influence the future of the court somewhere down the line. But I think that, the missed opportunity for Barack Obama to put someone else in the court, thanks to Mitch McConnell, with the failure of Merrick Garland being put on the court, the failure of Ruth Bader Ginsburg stepping down, the fact that Donald Trump was able to put in several justices, and we know that they lied under oath about how they feel about Roe v. Wade. And so we're seeing this time and time again, and I think young people, unfortunately, are getting so disgusted with the hyperpartisanship, especially the white nationalist hyperpartisanship of the Supreme Court. It's actually turning them off, and it's our job to help usher them and put them in the center of their own democracy.
And Neil, we're out of time, but I want to give you an opportunity to give us some final thoughts on the legal stuff that's presented by this Alito opinion. What should we be paying attention to as we wind our way to the end of the court's term?
It's not just the bottom line that Roe versus Wade, it's overruled. It's how they got there. The Alito draft has this kind of ridiculous historical test, which will turn back the clock and threaten everything from gay marriage to contraception laws to possibly even Brown versus Board of Education will probably flunk their test. And this is the result of a radical move by Mitch McConnell and others who monkeyed with the court. And the fruits of that are now, unfortunately, starting to be seen by the American people.
It is Monday, the 9th of May of 2022, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. It's been a weekend, has it not? Yes, it has. Well, we're going to get our juices flowing here to get this week starting. And here we are. How are you doing? We survived, and it looks like you have as well. And what do we have in store for you? Well, this is the salon that we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and anything can happen. Since we have a couple of long reads in store for you in the curated aspect of this salon, maybe we'll just forego the usual rant that we usually rant at this time. Every show now. What the heck has happened? But why don't we go ahead and just get right into giving you the lowdown on what we have in store. Well, at the top, of course, the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe is on track to shake up the midterms, and it better. On the rest of the menu, a confusing debate suggests homework is too much when it's often too little. The pandemic has pushed Oregon's public defender system to the brink. And Daunte Wright's mother was injured by police while legally videotaping a traffic stop from across the street. So she wasn't even interfering with their duly appointed duties. After the break, we move to the chef's table where divisions in the Taliban deepen as Afghan women defy the nation's strict veil edict. And Northern Ireland's rival parties are urged to work together after Sinn Fein's historic electoral victory. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page is the chat room link. And of course, the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, of course. And thank you, Kelly, for doing so. If you out there in listening land would gaze across the page to the left, you would notice, that's near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, and if you could afford, even in these perilous inflationary times, if you could afford to send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink, for instance, and do that once a month, it really helps us pay the bills. And the bills keep increasing, I gotta tell you. And thank you to those of you out there who have been so generous over these many years in helping us pay our bills. Thank you. And thank you to those of you in the future who will consider doing so. We need it. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple. You just go to @NetrootsRadio. Wow. Tom takes care of that. And thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime. I really try to get the that linked up on the social media platforms like Twitter, but sometimes the pod comes out before the show notes. I apologize, but they're always there at Daily Co's, and mostly you can find it if you follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. Oh yeah. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts, please, at Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, wherever podcasts can be found. And, of course, now the Deep State Archive, as we like to call it, of the whole Netroots Radio library. Well, we're still uploading. We're still getting it into the Internet Archive, and you can find the Netroots Radio library with West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy at archive.org. Okay. Links to that are also in the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's, so you can find it there as well. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe, yes. Got an online subscription to the Washington Post. Gotta. And it is by Jay Matthews out of the Washington Post. I'm still navigating the Washington Post splash page. Alrighty. Recently, I saw, and that would be the author here, once again, it is Jay Matthews. Recently, Jay Matthews saw in the Phi Delta Kappan magazine an attack on homework by a California high school junior. Oh, he's going to out this kid, Colin McGrath. Writing the piece as a letter to his younger brother, he said. In a 2020 Washington Post article, Denise Pope described what she learned from a survey of more than 50,000 high school students. On average, they complete 2.7 hours of homework a night. that means you won't be able to play on the trampoline anymore, ride your bike, or explore any other facet of life. Now, Jay Matthews' reaction was, huh? It was mine, too. I've spent 2 decades trying to dispel the myth that our kids all get too much homework. The truth, according to several scholarly sources, is that U.S. high school homework averages about an hour a night. Now, I always tell people I was homeschooled. Every day I got home from school, there was more homework waiting for me, and it was a lot more than an hour. What most teenagers do with the rest of their free time has little connection to trampolines, bicycles, or other healthy pursuits. Scholars say their favorite leisure activities are watching TV, playing video games, or maybe both at the same time. So I looked for that September 1st, 2020 article in my newspaper that McGrath mentioned. McGrath quoted Pope correctly. I missed that piece when it came out. Maybe most people did. I looked for Wikipedia's official answer to this frequently asked question: how much time does the average teenager spend on homework? I was horrified by what I saw. Delivered to millions of Wikipedia users, quote, high schoolers reported doing an average of 2.7 hours of homework per weeknight, according to a study by the Washington Post from 2018 to 2020 of over 50,000 individuals. Now, Jay Matthews, the author here, says that that's wrong. But I am used to widespread falsehoods about homework overload. Otherwise, responsible writers and filmmakers seem unable to resist adding to the hysteria. The popular 2009 film documentary Race to Nowhere screened in 47 states and 20 countries and left the impression that young Americans everywhere were buckling under homework's weight. Yet the film never told viewers that the average amount is just an hour a night. When Sarah Bennett, an attorney and activist parent, and Nancy Kalish, a journalist specializing in parenting issues, went on the Today Show in 2006 to publicize their book, The Case Against Homework: How Homework is Hurting Our Children and What We Can Do About It. My God. They said the average homework load had skyrocketed. They used that same word in their book. They were sensationalizing the fact that the average time 6 to 8 year olds spent on homework went from 8 minutes a day in 1981 to 22 minutes a day in 2003. That supposedly awful demand on their time was the equivalent of watching 2 episodes of SpongeBob SquarePants. The University of Michigan Institute for Social Research reported in 2003 an average of 50 minutes of homework each weekday for 15 to 17-year-olds, based on a nationally representative sample of 2,907 children and adolescents. And a 2019 report by the Pew Research Center, based on Bureau of Labor Stats, said 15 to 17-year-olds spent on average an hour a day on homework during the school year. And the 2019 UCLA Higher Education Research Institute survey of almost 96,000 college freshmen reported 57% of those students, all good enough to get into college, recalled spending 5 hours or less a week on homework their senior year of high school. Research shows homework has little value in elementary school, but does correlate with higher achievement in high school. The false notion of teenagers averaging 2.7 hours a night was incorrectly derived from a study by Challenge Success, a nonprofit organization that works on identifying problems and implementing best practices in schools. Pope, the author of the piece in my newspaper, is a co-founder of College Success and a senior lecturer at the Stanford University Graduate School of Education. Pope is a wonderful writer and scholar whom I have quoted in the past. She can't be blamed for Wikipedia saying wrongly the Challenge Success study was done by the Post. She also tried to tell readers that her study did not use a representative sample of U.S. teens. She said the students in the study were all from high-performing schools. I only wish she had revealed that in the same sentence that she reported the 2.7 hours per night homework average. Her note that the study was confined to the best schools appeared in a different paragraph. That may explain why McGrath, Wikipedia, and careless people like me failed, at least on first reading, to see that the sample was skewed. Too much homework can be a problem in high-achieving schools that cater to middle and upper-class children, but they represent only about half the country. People on my side of the argument would say that 3 hours of homework a night is fine if the courses raise achievement and college readiness. I don't think our kids' favorite pastimes of video games and TV are as good for them as going deep into those courses. And even 3 hours of homework leaves another 3 hours or so each night, plus the weekend for non-academic pursuits. My concern is the less advantaged students who bring the national average down to just 1 hour a night by doing little or no homework at all. Since 1996, I've been studying hundreds of unusually dedicated public high schools in low-income communities that have raised achievement for their students and made it far more likely they will succeed in college or whatever they do after high school. Those schools consider homework vital. One of them was led by Deborah Meyer, a hero to many progressive educators. She created New York Central Park East High School, where the mostly low-income students heard much about the importance of using time wisely. We told our kids that the school's explicit work probably required a 40-hour week. Maybe more, maybe less, she said. The official school week was about 30 hours, so she kept the school open an extra 10 hours a week, maybe an hour before school, an hour after school, and on Saturday mornings. She did not call the extra time homework, but made it clear it was essential. Everyone had more time to read than could be done while at school, mostly 5+ hours a week, she said, and probably another 5 or more, or probably another 5 for exploring and preparing and revising work done during school hours. Pope thinks in similar ways. She sees her challenge success research as a way to a much larger conversation about how to create more meaningful and engaging learning, how to add time for advisory, tutorial, and more student-to-teacher interaction, how to make all the kids in the school feel like they belong and are cared for. They will require more than our puny national homework average of an hour a night, after an inadequate average of 5 hours of class a day. More learning takes time. One step in the right direction would be accepting the need for regular homework, particularly in high school, and dispensing with falsehoods about giving kids too much to learn. Julian Flackus of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. Oregon's public defender system has shown cracks for years, but a post-pandemic glut of delayed cases has exposed shocking constitutional landmines impacting defendants and crime victims alike in a state with a national reputation for progressive social justice. An acute shortage of public defenders means that at any given time, at least several hundred low-income criminal defendants do not have legal representation, sometimes in serious felony cases that could put them away for years. Judges have dismissed nearly 4 dozen cases in the Portland area alone, among them a domestic violence case with allegations of strangulation as well as other major felonies, and have threatened to hold the state public defender's office in contempt of court for failing to provide attorneys. Oregon sends out a weekly list of unrepresented defendants to private attorneys begging for help. Some of the accused have been jailed without a lawyer for months on charges of rape, sodomy, child sexual abuse, or attempted murder, records show. Meanwhile, court proceedings for those not in custody are repeatedly pushed back, leaving defendants in limbo and courts spinning their wheels. We are overwhelmed. The pandemic is exposing all the problems that we have, the under-resourcing and the underfunding, and it's just like it hit a breaking point, said Carl McPherson, executive director of Metropolitan Public Defender, a large nonprofit public defender firm in Portland that temporarily stopped taking new cases when its attorneys could not keep up. It's just become abundantly clear that we are broken. You cannot do your job when you have 130 open felony cases per attorney, McPherson said. Public defenders warned that the system was on the brink of collapse before the pandemic. In 2019, some attorneys even picketed outside the state capitol for higher pay and reduced caseloads, but lawmakers did not act, and months later, COVID-19 shut down the courts. Now, the system is buckling before our eyes, said Kelly Simon, legal director for the Oregon ACLU, which is closely watching the situation and has not ruled out litigation. McPherson estimates there are now about 500 defendants going without public defenders statewide, and that's likely a significant undercount, because many are initially arraigned and then have their case deferred up to 60 days with plans to appoint permanent counsel later. The crisis in Oregon, while extreme, reflects a nationwide reckoning on indigent defense as courts seek to absorb a pandemic backlog of criminal cases with public defender systems that have long been underfunded and understaffed. From New England to New Mexico to Wisconsin, states are struggling to keep public defender services running amid an onslaught of cases and attorney departures. Staff bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The mother of Daunte Wright, who was fatally shot by a suburban Minneapolis police officer, said she was injured while she was briefly detained by one of the department's officers after she stopped to record an arrest of a person during a traffic stop. Katie Wright said she was worried about what the Brooklyn Center officers might do to the person being handcuffed when she pulled over on Wednesday night last week. In April of 2021, her 20-year-old son, who was black, was killed during a traffic stop by Kim Potter, a white officer who said she confused her handgun for her taser. All I was doing was my civic duty to pull over and make sure that those babies got home safe. And because I don't want what happened to me to happen to any other families, Wright said. It is legal for citizens to film police in Minnesota as long as they don't interfere with officers, according to the state's ACLU chapter. The AP left a message asking whether the officer involved would face discipline. Berkeley Center Police released body camera video that shows an officer crossing several lanes of traffic on Highway 252 and asking Wright for her driver's license. Wright refused, telling the officer she didn't need to show him her license because she had not been pulled over. The officer then pulled her out of her vehicle, took her phone, placed it on the roof of her car before leading her to a grassy median while holding her arm behind her back. Wright said the officer grabbed her so forcefully he injured her wrist. Wright told him her name and said, "You guys killed my son. I'm going to videotape them," gesturing to the other officers. The officer told Wright he would send her a ticket in the mail, and both returned to their vehicles. Brooklyn Center Police Union President Chuck Vellu praised the officer for what he called a professional response and restraint during the incident. He crossed several lanes of traffic. That's showing restraint. Along with the video, the Brooklyn Center Police Department released a statement that said the footage was released in an effort to promote public safety and dispel widespread rumor or unrest. So in other words, they admit they interfered with Daunte Wright's mother's constitutional right to videotape them from across the street. All right, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, getting medieval on your ass. When current hot new director Robert Eggers was a kid, Eggers, whose Hamlet precursor Viking tale The Northman is now in theaters, close on the heels of his surreal The Lighthouse. Anyway, when Eggers was a kid, he, like many other boys, discovered superhero comics. But then, a family friend introduced Eggers to some Renaissance engravings, plunging him into the world of medieval Western Europe, its images and its stories. This biographical fact helps make sense of The Northman, because to tell this Icelandic tale, Eggers and co-writer Icelandic poet Sean have used a medieval style of storytelling. So, in medieval tales, plot is king, but is handled differently than we're used to. There's not really much concern for suspense or arcs. It's just this thing happens, and then this, and then this. Themes are mostly non-existent, incidental at best, and character follows a whole different set of rules. People can be motivated by emotion, but primarily a supernatural force tells you what to do, and you either do it or you don't to reap the rewards or suffer the consequences. Toss psychology and character depth. Here's where you are, what you have, and what you must do. Go. This style can be hard for people used to realism and naturalism-influenced melodrama. People addicted to, well, so-and-so wouldn't really do that. That thinking will only kill your enjoyment of The Northman. Why does Olga fall for Amleth? Because her gods tell her to. When Amleth finds his father murdering uncle, why not kill him right there and then? Because he's been told his fate is to take revenge at the fiery gates of hell. To be honest, considering how streamlined your storytelling becomes, I'm surprised more movies aren't told using medieval rules. Eggers specifically wanted this level of simplicity to focus on visually and experientially immersing you into his strange mythic testosterone trip, which is the Northman's true strength. That and giving Anna Taylor-Joy another chance to define a character through her hair color. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Tanya Lewis. On Monday, a Supreme Court draft opinion was leaked, causing shockwaves. The opinion, if it's officially adopted, will overturn Roe v. Wade, the landmark 1973 ruling that guarantees the right to an abortion. Even though experts were expecting this outcome, the leaked opinion still came as something of a surprise.
The callousness of the decision is kind of shocking, too. The idea that that the Constitution doesn't protect people's decision-making around something so fundamental as childbearing when it has such huge impacts on their health and their ability to support themselves and their children.
That's Diana Green Foster, a professor of obstetrics, gynecology, and reproductive sciences at the University of California, San Francisco. She led the Turnaway Study, a longitudinal study of nearly 1,000 women seeking abortions who either got them or were turned away because they were just past the gestational cutoff. Contrary to what some anti-abortion activists say, getting an abortion did not harm women. In fact, women who were unable to access abortions were the ones who saw negative impacts, the study found.
What we see is very large health burdens, greater health risk for people who carry pregnancies to term. That's consistent with the medical literature. We see greater complications from childbirth than from abortion, and in fact, 2 women died after giving birth.
But the impacts were not limited to health. Being denied an abortion also had long-lasting negative effects on families' finances.
After one group gave birth, the people who received abortions and denied abortions there, you can see in their credit records, you can see in their public financial records that one group experienced greater bankruptcies, evictions, greater debt than the people who received their wanted abortion.
Not being able to access an abortion and being forced to carry a pregnancy to term resulted in worse outcomes for these women. I should note that the Turnaway Study specifically involved women, but of course not all people who get pregnant or seek abortions are women. And it's not as though people who get abortions are fundamentally different from those who want kids. In fact, many of the women who sought abortions later had children when they were ready. And those children fared better and were more secure, Foster and her colleagues found.
When they go on and get an abortion and they go on and have a baby, we see those babies do better than the children born because their mom was denied an abortion in terms of the mom's emotional bond with the child, the kids' economic well-being, the chance that they live in a house where there's just enough money to pay for food and housing.
If the draft opinion becomes official, it will immediately open the door for states to pass laws to restrict or ban abortion outright. And in fact, 13 states already have so-called trigger laws that will take effect as soon as Roe is struck down. To get an abortion, pregnant people in these states will then have to travel out of state if they can afford to do so, or they will not be able to get one. And the consequences for those who can't get the care they want will be serious.
For people who are unable to get their abortion because the Supreme Court just let states ban abortions, we're going to see worse physical health, greater economic hardship, lower achievement of aspirational plans, kids raised in more precarious economic circumstances, and people's lives upended.
Another effect of overturning Roe is that fewer medical providers will be trained in providing abortions. In a study published in the journal Obstetrics and Gynecology in April, researchers found that about 45% of OBGYN residency programs are in states that are certain or likely to ban abortion if the Supreme Court strikes down Roe. This means a similar percentage of OBGYN residents wouldn't be able to access abortion training. Study co-author Judy Steinauer is a professor at UCSF and director of the Kenneth J. Ryan Residency Training Program in Abortion and Family Planning.
Taking a step back, medical students and nursing students have to be able to counsel people about their options for pregnancy. It's going to be really important for all doctors and nurses and really any healthcare providers to be able to facilitate very quick referrals for people. So if someone's in a state with a really early abortion gestational limit and they want an abortion, they're going to need to be referred really fast.
And these laws don't just matter for abortion. They also affect training for other skills, including managing miscarriages. According to Steinauer, national and international OBGYN accreditation organizations require that providers know how to empty a uterus. And even if an individual doctor objects to abortion, they need to be able to do one in an emergency to save the patient's life if no one else is available to do it. And this could be really important in states that are passing laws that restrict abortions even in the most extreme circumstances, such as rape or incest.
I'm really hopeful that what will happen is all these trigger laws that go into place, I'm hoping that they will not be able to be enforced without exceptions. If a state, let's say, bans abortion except in these very specific circumstances around saving the life of the pregnant person or maybe saving grave health consequences, let's say, then a lot of the clinics that currently provide the care for those people close. Then we're really going to need the hospitals and the practicing clinicians who do gynecology to basically step up to provide the legal abortions.
For 60 Second Science, I'm Tanya Lewis.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
The discovery of penicillin in 1928 by Alexander Fleming was one of the greatest scientific achievements of the 20th century. It's hard to imagine a world before the development of what many consider to be miracle drugs. However, just 90 years ago, antibiotics weren't available. Thanks to antibiotics, some common illnesses such as strep throat are now easily treated, whereas in the past they often led to serious complications. Antibiotics serve an important role in keeping you and your loved ones healthy, but it's important to remember that antibiotics only treat bacterial infections. Most common infections such as colds, flu, most sore throats, bronchitis, and many sinus and ear infections are caused by viruses and do not respond to antibiotic treatment. These infections can be overcome by simply treating the symptoms and letting the illness run its course. Unfortunately, antibiotics have often been overused, resulting in decreased effectiveness and an increase in antibiotic-resistant diseases. Antibiotic resistance, or the increased ability of bacteria to survive in the presence of antibiotics, has become a major public health threat that we all need to help fight. When a person takes antibiotics, they are at risk for possibly having a bad reaction to these drugs. Some side effects can be quite serious, or even life-threatening in the case of an allergic reaction or severe diarrhea. This is why it is very important to only use antibiotics when they are absolutely needed, and not for viral infections. Talk to your healthcare professional about the best treatment for your illness. If it is caused by a virus, follow his or her recommendation for treating the symptoms. Learn more about appropriate antibiotic use and how to feel better when you don't need an antibiotic by visiting CDC's Get Smart, Know When Antibiotics Work website at cdc.gov/getsmart/community.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
For an expectant mother, taking care of her developing baby means taking good care of herself. One way she can do this is by ensuring she gets vaccinated. If a woman is or might be pregnant during flu season, it's especially important to get her annual flu shot, preferably before the end of October. In addition, women should be vaccinated against whooping cough during the 3rd trimester of each pregnancy. Failure to get vaccinated places both mother and baby at increased risk for serious complications of these infections, including hospitalization and even death. If you're pregnant or planning to get pregnant, ask your healthcare provider when you should get your vaccines. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Nearly nearly every nation with an advanced economy and some not so advanced, treats childcare as a fundamental public good, essential to nurturing children, families, and the whole society. But not our U.S. of A. Indeed, our so-called leaders relegate millions of working parents and 21 million kids under 5 to the tender mercies of a for-profit market, with child care facilities ranging from impossibly expensive to helter-skelter unlicensed kiddie corrals. Embarrassingly, while right-wingers mindlessly salute the U.S. as exceptional, they fail to note that what's exceptional about our child care system is that it's such a shambles it can't even be called a system, much less caring. For the past decade, independent journalist and economic analyst Bryce Covert has documented the worsening social crisis caused by this abject failure of leadership. 2/3 of our pre-K kids have both parents in the workforce, meaning care outside the home is essential. 85% of the parents say that finding quality, affordable child care in their area is a problem somewhere between serious and impossible. Nationwide, the annual cost for a 4-year-old's daycare averages about $13,000. Despite millions of working families finding this essential service unaffordable or even unavailable, political leaders have ignored their plight. Child care aid reaches only 15% of qualified kids. Some callous governors even divert chunks of federal child care subsidies to their own political priorities, such as corporate welfare. In 2017, even before COVID-19 abruptly shut down thousands of care centers, 40% of America's children lived in child care deserts, zip codes with 0 programs or so few that 2/3 or more of the area's children are unable to get in. This is Jim Hightower saying, is this the best we can do for the future of our nation?
If you'd like more of Jim Hightower's real populism, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter gives you the real lowdown on which corporations, by name, are doing what to the middle class, our environment, and our democracy. Each month, the Hightower Lowdown brings you facts you didn't know, along with actions you can take to fight back. It also comes with a sense of humor. Hightower believes we can fight the gods and still have fun. Plus, get this, it's cheap. Only $15 brings you 12 issues a year. For real populism, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics from the Center for Civic Education. We're joined today by Dr. Scott Casper, president of the American Antiquarian Society. Dr. Casper, what questions did the framers address in deciding how the president should be selected?
What they primarily thought about was having the president elected by Congress. That was in the Virginia plan, it was in the New Jersey plan, and it was, for the better part of the convention, what the delegates were planning. It wasn't clear exactly how. Would it be the House of Representatives? Would it be the Senate? Would it be some combination? But for most of the convention, it appeared that the Congress would select the president, which raised the issue of whether the president would be independent of Congress in any way. For all the checks and balances in the world, if the president is ultimately elected by Congress and potentially re-elected by Congress, then the president would be beholden to Congress. So election by Congress is always a problematic solution, even though it's the one that they spend the most time talking about because it's the one that seems most logical.
Check out more interviews with Dr. Scott Casper in Unit 2 of the We the People Open course, a free online course on the U.S. Constitution at learn.civiced.org. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1970. On that day, workers and the U.S. labor movement lost a leading voice in a tragic plane crash. There is no greater calling than to serve your fellow men. There is no greater contribution than to help the weak. There is no greater satisfaction than to do it well. These inspiring words were the credo of Walter P. Reuther, the longtime leader of the United Automobile Workers. Reuther became president of the UAW in 1946 and held that position for a quarter of a century. Under his leadership, auto workers saw some of the greatest gains. The UAW was able to win improvements in job security, health care, and wages. Reuther's effective leadership caused the governor of Michigan to dub him the most dangerous man in Detroit. Reuther learned about the labor movement from his father, a member of the Brewers Union in Wheeling, West Virginia. As a young man, Reuther moved to Detroit to work in the booming auto industry, landing a job at Ford. He became involved in union organizing, gaining national prominence as he led a strike against General Motors in 1945. The next year, he was elected president of the UAW. Reuther believed that unions were part of a broader social movement and had the power to improve the lives of all working Americans. He was a strong supporter of the Civil Rights Movement, delivering a speech at the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. As UAW president, he placed an emphasis on worker education. In 1960, the UAW built an education center in northern Michigan. Walter and his wife May were flying there when their plane crashed, killing them both. President Nixon called Reuther's death a deep loss not only for organized labor, but also for the cause of collective bargaining and the entire American process. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 43 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high in the low 50s, similar to what we had yesterday, nearly the same. And I must say that we did have a snowy mix Saturday night, Sunday morning. Fortunately, at elevation a couple of hundred feet higher than where the mothership for Netroots Radio resides, fortunately. Mostly cloudy with some showers this afternoon, except it's bringing about a quarter inch of rain, some showers, with thunder possible, which is electrical activity, which could possibly, and I hate to say this, might knock our power out, damn them. Winds will be out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Rain showers tonight, becoming intermittent in the early mornings. Low will be in the low 40s, winds light and variable, and it as well will bring with it just something slightly less than a quarter inch, and then mostly cloudy tomorrow, slight chance of a rain shower, and we'll have highs in the low 60s, winds out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County have not been updated, as they have not ever been updated for quite a while now, a year or more. From the Friday total, so I'll just remind you where we stand from late Friday, is 432,045, with deceased standing at 531. So that number has not changed for a week. Looks like grass pollen is high right outside the window here in the mothership at Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is good at 27 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is high at level 7. Take care. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.01 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles, and relative humidity is at 92%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 71 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 80 and sunny. Rome is 74 and fair. Kyiv is 62 and sunny, which is bad because that's when the drones can fly. Oh, it looks like Kabul is 66 and partly cloudy. Oh, I would say when the drones fly, I guess it could be bad for the Russian army. I had to reiterate that one more time. I'm sorry. Back to Kabul. You know, we used to be there for about 20 years. They're partly cloudy at 66 degrees. Hong Kong is 77 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 53 with rain. Sydney, Australia is 60 degrees with showers in the vicinity. San Francisco, California is 50 degrees and fair. And New York is 60 degrees Fahrenheit and fair. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Kathy Gannon of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. River City Hash Mondays. Aruza was furious and afraid, keeping her eyes open for Taliban on patrol as she and a friend shopped yesterday Sunday in Kabul's Makroyan neighborhood. The math teacher was fearful her large shawl, wrapped tight around her head and sweeping pale brown coat, would not satisfy the latest decree by the country's religiously driven Taliban government. After all, more than just her eyes were showing. Her face was visible. Aruza, who asked to be identified by just one name to avoid attracting attention, was not wearing the all-encompassing burqa preferred by the Taliban, who on Saturday issued a new dress code for women appearing in public. The edict said only a woman's eyes should be visible. The decree, by the Taliban's hardline leader Akhundzada, even suggested women should not leave their homes unless necessary, and outlines a series of punishments for male relatives of women violating the code. You know what's a coincidence? Carrie Lake, the QAnon religious zealot running for whatever it is, governor, is that what it is, in Arizona, said that men who allow their girlfriends or wives to have an abortion will suffer the consequences. So I guess if you're the Taliban telling women what to do with their bodies, you could be recruited to run for office in the Republican Party.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Sylvia Way of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The UK, US, and Irish governments have urged rival parties in Northern Ireland to come together to resurrect its power-sharing government after Irish Nationalist Party Sinn Fein scored a historic victory to become the biggest party in Northern Ireland's assembly. Sinn Fein, which seeks union with Ireland, won 27 seats in the 90-seat legislature, beating the Democratic Unionist Party, which secured 25 seats. It's the first time in Northern Ireland's history that an Irish nationalist party has topped the voting. But it's not clear whether Sinn Fein will lead a new government because of Northern Ireland's delicate power-sharing politics and ongoing tussles over the legacy of Britain's exit from the European Union. While Sinn Féin's Vice President, Michelle O'Neill, now has the right to the post of First Minister, a functioning Northern Ireland executive or devolved government cannot be formed unless the largest unionist party agrees to join in the role of Deputy First Minister. And a news flash just came across the transom saying that's exactly what they will not do, and that is agree. Well, let's see how that breaks out. And this brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Terrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.